So one thing I notice about myself, for example, um, is that I give the same lecture to this class as I do the previous class. And I don't do it verbatim, but what happens is I have an immediate comparison point between what I said an hour ago and what I'm saying now. And you guys might notice that sometimes I go into my head more often and that I'm not as maybe connected as I could be. And it's because I have the ideas in my head, right? And they're having a big effect on what I'm thinking. So, well, no shit, right? Let me share the desktop again here, and I'll show you what I'm driving at. We have these neuronal firings. We have this network in our brain. And on top of that, we have our cognitions. And is this mind that's separate from the brain, or how is it connected to the brain? These become very philosophical questions, and I'm going to leave them alone for now. But in this cognitive network, we have some nodes, that's what they're called, that are larger than other nodes, right? And they are more important, and they have a bigger effect on what we say and what we think. And so this is where we have, for instance, the fact that I just talked with the other class and did this presentation. That whole presentation is still in my head. I'm still processing it. And so I'm constantly going to be comparing what I'm saying here with what I said before. And I'm going, okay, did I cover everything? Did I get everything on there that I said last time? Oh, I'm going to try something new and different. And that becomes distracting. Now, let's take this a step further. Here, with these kinds of nodes, and let's get this starting to come back to what we were talking before, this is where we have our person prototypes. And how these nodes, and here we might have beliefs about other aspects, what our relationship is with our parents. Here we have, like, what's the most important thing that's going on in my life right now? And these create what's called a neural network. And these nets will influence, if something's coming in from over here, what we will receive and take in and what we won't. And that's why we have things like bias. We can have these person prototypes, these stereotypes that we developed because of how we grew up and the things that we were taught and the social norms that existed. And that can influence how we see and treat with other people. So we may have specific ideas of what an Asian is like, and probably one of the basic ones is, well, they're really good at math and science. Well, yeah, some are, but then so are some Caucasians. Having a stereotype and saying, well, just because somebody's from Asia, they're good at science is really inaccurate, and will have us treat with them in a way that doesn't really make sense. So let's get back on track again with the chapter that you're going to do the quiz on. And so none of the stuff that we're talking about now is going to be on quiz number 9. This is about quiz number 7. So if we've got creativity and person prototypes, what Elsbach is trying to get us to understand is when you come in with a creative idea into an office and you're talking with an executive, that person doesn't know exactly what that idea is going to be. That person doesn't know exactly whether something's going to be creative or not, because it is a social construction. So there's a fair bit of uncertainty. So they're going to have their person prototypes influence how they see you. And there's 3 that Elsbach identifies for us: the showrunner, the artist, and the neophyte. And her point is this: when you come in to pitch a creative idea, the person that you're pitching to is going to see you either as a showrunner, an artist, or a neophyte. Those are the person prototypes executives have about people who pitch creative ideas. It's interesting, right? And so, what we need to learn from that in terms of our presentation is that we would want to be one of these three people. We would want to look like one of these three prototypes so that people can get our ideas more easily and adopt them more likely. And she says the showrunner looks like this. The person sees you and they say, oh, this is a person that's well organized. This is a person that can implement this. They have the experience. They know how to get stuff done in this organization. They know who the people are that can make things happen. Or they might see you as an artist. They see you as somebody who's maybe sort of a little bit more up in the clouds, a little less conventional, a little bit more willing to go outside of the norm. Or they might see you as a neophyte. And the neophyte is somebody who doesn't really know what they're doing. This is brand new for them, and that they need a lot of help. So what she's saying is that when we pitch a creative idea, as much as possible, we want to present ourselves as one of these three prototypes. And that's very similar to what we learned in the first chapter, right? We know that there's different kinds of decision makers, right? And so when we throw a presentation down, that presentation should be aimed at, as much as possible, to the decision-making style of the person we're talking to. This is very similar again, right? So what you want to do is you want to think about, and am I a showrunner? Am I an artist? Am I a neophyte? Which am I most comfortable with? And work hard to make sure that that comes out, and that is visible, easily seen. And if you come across that way, the person is more likely to adopt your idea as opposed to rejecting it. Now, she also identifies 4 other prototypes, person prototypes that people can hold, and that if they see you as one of these, a pushover, a robot, used car salesman, or a charity case, then they're likely to reject your idea and not adopt it. And the pushover is somebody, for example, you're presenting an idea and the executive pushes back and says, oh, I don't know, I don't think that that's a very good idea. Well, if you cave and go, oh, well, yeah, well, maybe it's not. I thought it was, but gee whiz, I suppose in the end it really isn't. They're going to reject your idea. If you're a robot, somebody who just coldly talks without any inflection in your voice, without any connection with the audience, just simply putting down the idea, they're going to reject it as well. The used car salesman, if you're too slick, you just sort of gloss over things that might be important. You're just trying to look good. You're shooting from the hip, for example, as opposed to providing good details and a rich story about what your idea is. They're likely to reject it. And the charity case can be somebody who can come in and they're begging for the idea to be accepted. We need to do this new different thing in manufacturing. If we don't, the manufacturing department's going to be in trouble. Please, please take this and implement it and let us do it. That ain't going to work either. So, next thing she wants us to keep in mind is that, in fact, most pitches fail. Most creative pitches that people bring in are rejected and people just don't accept them. I can tell you a story of one guy I knew back in Bowling Green. He worked in the telecommunications field and he had this really neat idea to solve what was called the last mile problem, of how to get internet connections down to people's homes. And he had this really cool idea. He had to pitch it 12 times before somebody was willing to say, okay, I'm willing to invest in this. So he got a lot of rejections because it was creative, it was different, it was new, and they weren't willing to take the chance. And that's what you're up against. And she also points out that the showrunner usually wins. So why is that? Well, think about television, for example. Somebody who's produced a television show that's been successful, got good ratings, made the network a lot of money, or Netflix a lot of money. When they get pitched, when they come up with another idea, they're going to go, well, they know how to do this. They've worked with this before. They've got the experience. They're more likely to accept a creative idea from that person. Of course, the problem for us is that we ain't all showrunners, and it's hard for some of us to adopt that kind of persona or even just simply reflect that kind of persona when we're presenting our ideas. So, what can we do? Well, here's what you want to do. No matter which persona you're going to adopt for your presentation, exude passion. Let them know that you're really excited about this idea, that you think it's really cool. Show them how it's great, how it's excellent. Express that passion. Let it come through when you're showing the idea. That's going to help you no matter if you're a showrunner or not. So always exude passion. And the other thing is make sure you get the decision makers involved. So when you're presenting to somebody, an executive or an upper level manager, make sure that you ask them what they think of this idea. Ask them how they can contribute. Ask them what they think we can do to change things to make them better. Look for their contributions. Turn to them to help you make things better because they've got more experience or they've perhaps got more skill. Doesn't matter which. Just simply get them involved in it. Get them talking about it. Go back and forth. Don't just be throwing the idea out. Get them engaged in the idea. Ask them to provide you with input and feedback to make the idea stronger. So even if you're not a showrunner type, you can do these two things as an artistic type or a neophyte type, whichever of those two personas you want to project, and that will help you get your pitch accepted. And it's more likely, and even of course, it'll help you if you're a showrunner. Now, what about the poor catcher, the guy or the gal that's receiving the pitch from you? And I'm not trying to be weird here. This is just the language she uses in her textbook. How does a person who's at the is in the office and somebody's pitching an idea to them, well, what can they do? And she says you always want to make sure you test for expertise and past experiences. And you do that to get past your person prototype. You know, we know, at least now for sure, that there are these three prototypes we're likely to be thinking of when we look at the person who's pitching the idea. And she's saying, you don't want to be caught up in that. And how do you get past it? Test expertise and past experience. Ask specific questions and pointed questions to see that that person actually knows what they're doing, knows what they're talking about, understands the problems, and understands how their creative idea is going to solve them. And ask them for their past experiences. Where have they done this before? How have they succeeded at it? Ask them for a prototype. If they're giving you an idea of something that they think would work really well, have them demonstrate why it works. When we're looking at things like physical product with 3D printers nowadays, for example, you can build them something and you can show them how it would work. Do a test run in the organization. Let's say you want to try a different sales technique. Well, take 3 or 4 maybe of your best salespeople, have them show that if we try this new different approach, we in fact get more customers or more repeat business, or people spend more when they're buying a product, and then demonstrate it. Ask them to do that. Ask them to show you the money, so to speak. And the last thing that she suggests you should do is when somebody's pitching an idea, make sure you bring in other people, people whom you trust, people who you are confident will be able to understand things and bring all sorts of different perspectives to the table so that they can ask questions of the person pitching the idea, and also so that you can talk with them after the presentation and sort of have a conference with them and make sure that you got a pretty clear picture of what's going on and that you see both the benefits and the weaknesses in the idea, so that you're going to be less caught up in your prototype and less caught up in thinking, well, this is what this idea is like, or it's in this way, and you'll have a clearer picture of what's going on. So stop sharing the screen. Um, so here we are. We have a sense of what's going on in that chapter. Do you have any specific questions about what I was talking about?
I guess one of my questions would be, why would an artist or a neophyte be preferred prototype over a showrunner? I mean, it just seems like the showrunner would take the cake across the board. I know you explained that already, but I mean, I'm just curious why an artist and a neophyte are even on that list.
Well, first of all, they're on that list because she identified them as prototypes that people hold. When they see somebody coming in and doing a presentation on a creative idea, people will think that you're one of those three types. How's that for a start?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. Now, the reason you and I have to decide which one of them we adopt is because we need to adopt the prototype that we're most comfortable with, right? I mean, we talked about being an authentic speaker. If you're not good at being the showrunner, and she describes all the things a showrunner looks like, then adopt one of the other two because it suits your personality more. It's easier for you to express those prototype approaches, if you will, to the manager. Does that make sense, or did I confuse it?
I'm still getting it.
You are or you're not?
Still on board. Still understand.
Okay, cool. So it's not that we would it's not that we want to adopt one that's less likely to succeed. It's we want to adopt one that we can suit better. Otherwise, we look weird up there and they're going, this person's strange. And we talked about that in presentations. Be yourself as much as you can. If you're more of an artistic type, well, then you want to adopt the artistic prototype and just go with it. Be enthusiastic with what you're saying, and express your ideas really well and engage the person. And I mean, then you just got to roll with it, throw it out there, roll the dice, and keep your fingers crossed. Do the best you can, and that's it. Other questions? Well, okay. We're done for the day. We'll see each other next Wednesday. If there's anything that comes up or you have any questions, let me know. Always happy to have a quick Zoom meeting with you. Happy to respond to emails. Just make sure that they're very well worded so they're easy to read. Well, you know what I mean. Just throw it out there. And we'll talk next week. See ya.
Thank you.
Welcome.